Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Fairhope Board of Adjustment and Appeals meeting to order. Our first order of business is I'd like to introduce we've got some new members on our board, so if we'll go from the end and introduce yourself for us.
My name is Donna Cook.
My name is Mike Ball.
Anil Vera.
Kathy Slagle.
Frank Lamia.
And I want to thank the former members that were on our board for their service to the city also. Our first.
We do have one new alternate member.
Okay, we have an alternate member.
As mentioned, Ryan Baker.
Ryan Baker, okay, and then we have another alternate with us. David Martin. Okay, great. So our first order of business is the approval of minutes for our June 10th meeting. Is there any changes or omissions that we need to consider?
No, I move the minutes be accepted.
Okay, and I'll second. All in favor, I think?
Just the two of
Just
us.
the two of us. Okay.
Aye.
Aye, so motion carries unanimously. First order of business is BOA 21.05. It's a public hearing to consider the request of Justin and Emily Chappelle to allow a front setback variance for the accessory structure located at 7275 Wild Oaks Road.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Samara Wally, and this is BOA 21.05, 7275 Wild Oaks Drive. Here we have our zoning map and our aerial map showing the location of the subject site at the corner of Wild Oaks Road and Clearwater Circle. The property is zoned R1 Single Family Residential. The applicants, Justin and Emily Chappelle, are requesting a variance to the front yard setback for an addition to the primary structure. The applicant provided a narrative stating that the proposed addition will be a carport with additional storage space. According to the applicant, the current configuration prohibits adding additional structures anywhere on the lot, and again, the property is single-family residential. Here is a survey of the property. You will see that the way that the house is oriented, it is at an angle. Therefore, you have two front yard setbacks, one along Clearwater Circle and one along Wild Oaks Road. The addition is going to be on the Clearwater Circle side. Here is an image of the proposed addition. Again, it is going to be on the Clearwater Circle street side. It is proposed to be 20 feet from Clearwater Circle. The required setback is 35 feet currently. It should be noted that the applicant previously submitted an application to allow a detached accessory structure that would be situated closer to Clearwater Circle. The zoning ordinance required that detached structures, accessory structures, be situated no nearer than the principal structure along street sides and behind the rear building line of the principal structure. The original drawing has been revised to indicate an addition rather than a detached accessory structure, and therefore the primary structure setbacks are applicable. According to the recorded plat, there is a 35-foot setback requirement along Clearwater Circle, and the proposed addition will be 20 feet from Clearwater Circle. Again, the historic plat of Wild Oak subdivision, which dates back to 1973, it indicates the property across the street also has a 35-foot setback. However, aerial imagery indicates that the house appears to encroach on that setback, and it's situated approximately 20 feet from the front property line on Clearwater Circle. If staff uses that as a precedent, that is how we have determined that it would not change the character of the neighborhood. Lastly, the image that was submitted is not to scale, and it does not provide the rear setbacks. The addition must meet the rear setback requirement. So if you'll see on the screen, we just kind of estimated according to the 35-foot rear requirement that this drawing does indicate that it may encroach on the rear setback. However, it is not to scale. But at the time of building permit, we will require that be in compliance. Follow-up activities required by staff. If it is the pleasure of the Board of Zoning Adjustment to approve the case, the applicant is advised that certified meeting minutes must be recorded with the judge of probate, and conditions of approval must be met within 365 days of approval, or the approval is null and void. Staff recommends the Board of Zoning Adjustment approve case BOA 21.05, subject to the following conditions. The addition shall not encroach in the 35-foot rear setback requirement. All setbacks shall be illustrated on any plan submitted for building permit. And number 2, submission of revised application document stating that the addition is attached. If you'll see in your case file, the initial application was for a detached structure, but this will be an attached addition. And that is all that I have, unless you have any questions.
I had one. I mean, how many, when you do your notification for surrounding people, how many of the neighbors did you have to notify about this?
Is this 300 feet?
Is that property line the property line?
Well, we give it a little extra buffer, so we go all around the property line. If you take a right angle from the property line and draw a shape around that, any parcel that intersects is the notifications that we do. We notify.
So in that scenario, you would have notified everybody around this property?
That's
And
correct.
you didn't get any objections to it?
We had one letter of support,
I saw that.
and no objections.
Okay.
And to, go a little bit more detail since we have new members. A hardship, and I think we sent you a document that our legal team
Right.
helped put together and it's revised through the years on what a hardship, what a variance is. At first blush, the house is there and at an odd angle, and that's not a hardship because that you can't self-impose a hardship. What we did look at is instead is, do they have the same use of their property as other like properties do? And most of the places around the city on corner lots have a front setback of 35 feet and a street side setback of 20 feet. And we looked at this, and the neighboring property has a similar situation. In some instances, we would say, no, don't do that, because if it was a neighborhood that was designed that way and stayed that way through the years, there's no precedent. If it's a PUD or something along those lines that have guidance. But because right across the street, there seems to be a precedent, then this is an opportunity to use their property like their neighbors have been. Do want to call attention to one thing, and there is, seems to be some restrictions in the deeds and covenants about this 35-foot on both sides. That is not our responsibility. We do not govern deed restrictions, things like that, nor do we conflict with those. The applicant has to, deal with whatever restrictions there. If the board so chooses to grant the variance, we kind of get out of their way to let them do that. So we just are not the governing body for these deed restrictions. Just want to let that know, so if anybody asks, that's on the table. But I think they've done a lot of work in a few months looking at this and how it could fit in. And I think just to the north of this property, the cul-de-sac starts turning. So having that street, the street view there and that protection was one of the concerns. And I think they situated enough to, well enough to protect that. So the street's the frontage within the cul-de-sac. It is an empty lot currently. It is protected, and I think it does a good job of addressing that.
I have a question. We had this to our board previously, correct?
It was.
And then,
No,
It
we
didn't
actually,
come.
this,
It didn't come.
you might have seen this, but it was pulled before we actually ever made
Right.
it to a meeting.
to the meeting, okay.
Yes.
And so, rather than have a detached garage, they're just adding it to the house,
That's correct.
so to change some of the dynamics.
Right.
The previous configuration was closer to Clearwater Circle, and it was detached.
Okay.
Yes.
And So the part that's in the back where you have to have, what, the 35, this drawing has it as an encroachment, is that correct?
Yes.
So
If
they'll
you
have
can go
to
back to
push
the.
it in front of the house?
And it's not to
It's not
scale,
to
so you can see
scale.
just a corner is over that red line. And not knowing where it's to scale, we just kind of pulled that line off the property line to get an idea.
Right.
But they, yes, they
Is there a
cannot.
little wiggle room for them to push it down?
But that's,
Yeah, I mean, with the plans, they can,
They can modify it.
Right.
right.
And that'll be a condition of the permit.
Yes, when we
Correct.
see when we see the permit, everything will be to scale and on a survey, so when we see that, and I mean, we'd love to see it right now, but getting construction documents is expensive, so
Right.
without this approval, you know, I think that's something we typically support with a condition, and when we see that, we just don't want it to be a surprise to the applicant when they come in with the same plan, we say, we can't build it there. So as things are drawn to scale, that can meet the 35 feet.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Is there any other questions?
No.
I'd like to open it to the public portion of the meeting. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for or against it? And I did this a little backwards, so I'm sorry, the applicant, does the applicant want to speak to us?
You guys have said.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so, and then we did have one letter of support.
Yes, we do.
For it, so, okay. And, all right, I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Is there any discussion amongst ourselves?
Nope.
Any new members want to make the motion?
I'll go ahead and
Okay.
I'll recommend that we approve BOA 2105 and with the following conditions that were set before us. Number one, the addition shall not encroach on the 35-foot rear setback requirement, and all setbacks shall be illustrated on any plans submitted for building permit. And number two, submission of the revised application document stating that the addition is attached.
Do we have a second on that? Okay. And then all in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna, you'll go first.
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you.
Congratulations.
All right.
Thank you.
Is there any, oh,
3 months, and it just took that quick, right?
do we have some old and new business that we want to talk about?
Yes, I would like to propose with our new members that we do have a work session in the coming weeks prior to the next meeting. At this time, we do have a meeting, we do have one case on next month's meeting, so just a work session to get to know one another, not to take any action, just to kind of get to know one another. And I have a calendar here, and maybe just looking at potentially around August 4th, middle to the end of the week is usually better. We do have meetings at the first of the week for other committees and council. So
What time of day are you thinking?
I'm up to, if y'all want to get lunch, we can potentially bring some sandwiches or something in. If you want to just kind of get in and out, I'm flexible in that sense.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Okay, at what time?
11:30, 12?
11:30 would be good for me.
Okay. Does that work for
Yes.
everyone? Okay. No?
Maybe. Y'all are fine. Keep going.
All right. We will, if, I think you need to, somebody make a motion to have that meeting, and we will post it. We don't advertise those like a typical meeting. We'll just put a public notice announcement out. May have that at Nick Center
Okay.
for the location at 11:30 on August 4th. And we will coordinate that. If the Nick Center is not available, we'll change the location and let you know.
Do you want a motion to that effect?
Please.
I'm so moved that we have a work session, or ZBA, at the Nick Center, 11:30 on August 4th, a Wednesday.
And I'll second. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
And one other thing, would you mind putting together a list of all the members and their email addresses and their phone numbers for us so that we all have that?
Absolutely. And if we will send out the list we have, we'll compile, send it out to everyone. And if you'll let us know you have a different number you'd rather you do, or a different email address, or your physical address has changed, if you have any corrections, please let us know.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, Ally, will you get that out tomorrow? Thank you.
Do you want to bring that to the work session and we can make corrections on
Yep.
that day? That'd be probably
Sure.
easier for you.
That'll be great. Thank you.
I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
All right, thank you.